Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Flight Lieutenant Peter Lisney, and in this episode we'll hear what it's like to be an apprentice in today's Royal Air Force. We'll also reheat a few stories, just in case you missed them. But first, see if you can identify this noise. Find out if you're right at the end of this episode. Now, the RAF Apprenticeship programme is almost as old as the RAF itself. But what is it like to be an RAF apprentice today? We hear from some of our Apprenticeship Award winners and from a member of the team that makes sure the programme is still one of the best in the country. Our correspondent is Flight Lieutenant Chris Sully.
We don't want to lose people in the Royal Air Force. We want to make sure that we keep them. And one of the fantastic ways in which the RAF is able to retain people is through a continued professional development programme.
The apprenticeship is in aviation operations on the ground. It would qualify me to work in airports all over the country and improve my communication and organisational skills.
I think the most challenging part of the apprenticeship so far has been getting to grips with the terminology that the civilians use. It's very different to how we at the military talk about aviation, but it's also been one of the most interesting parts of the apprenticeship.
Flight Lieutenant Duncan Pope is the SO3 of RAF Apprenticeships, based at RAF Cosford. He joins us now. Duncan, who are some of the famous former RAF apprentices that we may be familiar with?
That's a lovely question, actually, to start with. I think when I think of RAF apprenticeships, one of the most famous names that comes to mind is Air Commodore Sir Frank Whittle. For those of you who don't know who that is, he's the man who famously single-handedly invented the jet engine. But he started life as an aircraft apprentice, and he worked his way up to the heady heights of an Air Commodore. So I think that's one of the most famous people I would always think about when I think about apprenticeships. But of course, we've also seen various other accolades, if you like, of RAF apprentices who've been through. We've had people who've been awarded with the Victoria Cross. We've had apprentices who've represented Great Britain in the Olympics. And 3 of RAF Halton's apprentices were actually members of the Great Escape. So a lot of famous apprentices have come out of Royal Air Force apprenticeships.
So very much the embodiment of per ardua ad astra, coming through adversity to the stars and beyond.
Absolutely.
For those who aren't maybe familiar with an RAF apprenticeship, what is it exactly?
I think really an apprenticeship is a real job. That's first and foremost that comes to my mind when I think about an apprenticeship. It's where you learn, gain experience, and let's not forget we get paid for doing that as well. So really it's a government subsidised work-based learning programme for people who are 16 and over. They combine on-the-job training with also some classroom learning as well. In the Royal Air Force, we've got on programme at any one time approximately 3,000 apprentices across 23 different trade groups. We offer them at level 2, 3 and 4, different levels that we offer.
There is a huge drive in 2020 and 2021 by the government to push more people into apprenticeships, maybe rather than university. How does an RAF apprenticeship differ from a civilian apprenticeship?
I think in terms of content, in terms of the apprenticeship, it doesn't really differ at all. RAF apprentices work to the same standards that have been written by industry that anybody in the civilian world will work towards. So in terms of the actual qualification, there's no difference. If I may, though, I think where RAF apprenticeships differ from those in the civilian world, we could maybe talk about what the RAF offers that's slightly different to what a civilian apprenticeship offers. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take the wage to begin with. In the civilian world, an employer could offer an apprentice the minimum apprenticeship wage, which at my last reading was, I think, £3.70 an hour, which maybe equates to just shy of £7,700 a year if you were looking at a salary. But the RAF doesn't do that. The RAF welcomes people into the Royal Air Force, and you get paid for going through your training on a salary of £15,300 roughly. So you're already coming into a job which gives you a much better salary, starting salary, that is, straight away. And as soon as you finish your professional training, we're going to give you some more money. We're going to increase that money to about £18,900 per year. And on top of that, of course, when you're in the Royal Air Force, you get all the benefits that brings. Adventurous training, sport, subsidised accommodation, subsidised food that comes along with it as well. And let's not forget, it's free to the individual. We don't charge you anything, and there's no contributions to make when you come and do a Royal Air Force apprenticeship. And you're fully supported throughout the length of stay on that apprenticeship. The RAF supports all its learners with light blue suits. We're all, the majority of us are Royal Air Force and our civil service counterparts. And our success rate speaks for itself. We've got a 90% success rate of people who join our RAF apprenticeship schemes.
Why does the RAF feel it's important to have the Apprentice Award system?
It's hugely important to the RAF, I think, to celebrate success in the first instance, and really to recognise the hard work that goes into not only RAF training, but also the associated apprenticeship as well. And if we can, in some small way, pay tribute, recognise those individuals who are at the pinnacle of their trade. And I think that's a fantastic thing, and has proved to be over recent years when we've run our Apprenticeship Awards.
Let's now catch up with one or two of those passing through the RAF apprenticeship scheme, starting with Laura.
My apprenticeship is in survival equipment, so I've completed an MVQ Level 3 Extended Diploma in Aeronautical Engineering through survival equipment. So it means I'm now fully qualified to service and maintain all the survival equipment that we need to keep our aircrew safe.
The apprenticeship is in aviation operations on the ground. It would qualify me to work in airports all over the country, and improve my communication and organisational skills. Completing the Level 3 apprenticeship has given me supervisory or managerial skills that may help me if I go into a more managerial role later in my career.
So my apprenticeship is I've got an MVQ in food and beverages hospitality management, and that basically just means that I'm qualified to work in all areas of hospitality, whether that's working in the bar or working in accommodation.
We were talking about the awards themselves a moment ago. Last year, 2020, was the oddest of years with COVID and everything else. What happened to the awards during 2020?
Well, yeah, the build-up was fantastic as usual, and extremely busy as it always is on the run-up to these sorts of events. And we put all the preparation, all the hard work in. The Apprenticeship Awards were due to take place at Cosford, at RAF Cosford, at the museum at RAF Cosford. They just slipped away because we had this horrible virus that came around, COVID. So unfortunately, they got cancelled. And it was going to be a really important year. It was going to be the 100th anniversary of Royal Air Force Apprenticeships. So yes, the RAF was formed in 1918, but apprentices started in 1920. So it was going to be a very important year for us. But circumstances got the better of us, unfortunately. The awards were still presented. We'd still had all our winners. But what happened with those awards is that we sent them to the stations where each of our winners were based. And they were presented with their awards by the station commander at their own awards events. So a little bit lower key than maybe we would have hoped, but nevertheless the right thing was done, and the right thing being that we wanted to make sure that they were recognised with that award by their group captain, their station commander at their own stations.
So a virtual award ceremony, listen, if it's good enough for the Oscars, it's good enough for the RAF, I guess, in that situation. The opportunity to go and talk to some of the award recipients for 2020 came to us at the RAF Media Reserves. We took that opportunity. We went out and met some of the team, some of them remotely, some of them face-to-face. These are some of the award recipients from 2020.
I think the most challenging part of the apprenticeship so far has been getting to grips with the terminology that the civilians use. It's very different to how we at the military talk about aviation, but it's also been one of the most interesting parts of the apprenticeship, because it's given me an insight to the civilian aviation world.
So the most challenging thing about completing an RAF apprenticeship, halfway during I found out I was going to become a father for the first time, which then led me to want to complete what is designed to be a 3-year course, because I knew I was going to have my hands full when my son came along, which I was correct.
The best thing is that it's helped me learn, and it's something that can help with promotion as well within my career. It also helps me if I did ever want to leave the RAF. It helps me to get a job within the same trade.
The best thing about completing an RAF apprenticeship is the qualifications gained during the apprenticeship and skills learnt, as well as the opportunities to do adventurous training and play sport with the RAF.
I think through doing the apprenticeship, the best thing for me was making some really good friends that I think I'll keep in touch with them for a long time because they've always been there for me.
The military offers you the chance to progress in your education, so some people may have come straight out of school, not had the chance to go to college or go to university, so I don't see why you would turn down free education when you're given time to do it at work and in your own hours as well. So it's a win-win situation for me.
I think people should consider doing an RAF apprenticeship because it is recognised by civilian organisations. It shows that the training is first class and you are getting a high quality of training, but it also is getting you out and about, allows you to travel and see the world while getting paid and earning those qualifications.
The best thing about completing an RAF apprenticeship was the training. The training was very hands-on, which only helped to enhance my level of competency as well as my level of confidence within the workplace.
So the offer of an apprenticeship alongside my RAF training was important to me because it showed that the civilian bodies recognised the training that the RAF gave us, and therefore it was guaranteed to be to a high standard.
I think it's important because one of the perks of joining the military is that they do try and progress you educationally wise. So although I hold a degree, there's still time to learn in any sort of capacity. So whatever they offer me, of course, I would be willing to try that, because at the end of the day, the broader your knowledge, that can only help me in my job.
Just a handful of the RAF Apprentice Award winners from 2020. We're chatting with Flight Lieutenant Duncan Pope, SO3 of RAF Apprenticeships at RAF Cosford. Duncan, for you, were there any citations that particularly stood out last year?
Oh, that's a good question, and I'm going to give you a really bland answer, and that is that they all stood out. But I say that with a slight caveat in that, they had to jump through several hoops to get to where they were in the first place. They were nominated for the award by their trade, by their chain of command. Anybody could have nominated them. But effectively, we still needed to read through those citations and decide who was going to be the winners. And it's very humbling to me to read through some of these citations. Not only are they working extremely hard as an apprentice, but it's everything else that the Royal Air Force throws at them. They really are extremely busy individuals. And some of the citations will highlight adversity, before they joined the RAF, some of the things that they've had to overcome, whether it be a learning difficulty or challenges that they had applying for the Royal Air Force, not getting in first time and then trying again and getting in and pushing through and proving themselves. So to read through those citations is an extremely humbling experience, and I've had the privilege, I guess, of reading out some of those citations at recent events, and yeah, I have to pinch myself thinking this is tomorrow's Royal Air Force that we're talking about here. We really do have some fantastic people out there.
Reapplying against adversity, very much in the spirit and tradition of Sir Frank Whittle himself. So it's nice to see that continuation, I guess. When will the next award ceremony take place, Duncan?
Well, it's a little bit up in the air at the moment, I have to say. We haven't got a date for the next one. We have no plans to deliver an award this year for obvious reasons, and we certainly don't want to be doing one of these virtually. We want to be able to get people in a room with the right people, with mums and dads, with chains of command, with senior RAF leaders, to pay tribute to these guys who will become award winners. So watch this space, I guess. But I would suspect that 2022 things might be back on the cards again.
Fingers crossed on that one. We won't hold you to it. But you mentioned the families of recipients and award nominees coming forward to that. How important do you feel it is? Because presumably the families have gone on this journey with the award recipients and with all the apprentices themselves.
No, absolutely. And you know, my team and myself, when we're putting these apprenticeship awards together, we really go at them with that in mind. What do I mean by that? We don't put these awards on for the RAF senior management team. We don't put them on for the benefit of us. We put them on for the award winners and their families. And what we say is, if we see them smiling, then surely everybody else is going to be happy with what we're doing. So the aim is to make sure that we put on an event that allows the parents and friends and family to see the Royal Air Force in a fantastic light, but also maybe shows the RAF in a different light that they've not been exposed to before. You know, if we go and have a meal somewhere and we see all the pomp and ceremony, but we also get the opportunity to see the relaxed side as well. And it's absolutely fantastic. And it's great when parents come up to me in the aftermath and say, you know, I didn't know my little Johnny did so much, or my little Sarah did X, Y, and Z. I didn't know that until I sat in that room and you read that citation. And I had to pinch myself. Is that really my young girl, my young lad, who's here getting this award? You know, because they don't tell me that this is all the stuff that they're doing. They just get on with it. And then all of a sudden, what's going on? So, yeah, and that's what makes me want to go back and do it again, I suppose, is that sort of reaction.
Some incredible and some very deserving RAF Apprentice Award winners. Let's meet some more of them right now.
The offer of the apprenticeship is important to me and my family because it will give me skills and knowledge that may help me later in my career, or if I were to go back into a civilian role, it may give the skills and knowledge may be useful there.
What would you say are your long-term aspirations in the Royal Air Force?
I'd like to get more travel in, see more of the world, do my job in different environments. I'd also like to gain promotion and work at the Defence College of Aeronautical Engineering as an instructor myself.
Long term, I'm going to complete my level 3 MVQ. Try and get a bit more experience by learning from other trades of the hands, and then maybe further into commission to a pilot or commission to an engineering officer.
So I'd say short distance, I'd like to specialise. The police is quite a good trade to specialise. Personally, I'd like to go into a special investigation branch. Long-term aspirations, I see myself commissioning.
Duncan, the apprenticeship scheme is a fantastic thing, and in an ideal world, people get the time and the resources to do that. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a practical world where, at the moment, lots of people are distance working from home, and those that are still working and able to go into the workshop, the office, wherever it may be, are busy people. That's never going to change. How do we get around that? How do we make time for people to get time to study?
Yes, we are all very busy, and I'm not doubting that at all. And there will be plenty of times when I know that people who are on operations, who are trying to get the job done, will be frustrated when members of the apprenticeship team are banging on the door and saying, "Hey, come on, I need SAC Joey to come and do some reviews with me so that he can pass his apprenticeship," when all the line manager wants him to do is get on with his job.
And some of the apprentices we spoke to certainly reflected those frustrations.
What has been the most challenging thing about completing an apprenticeship?
Completing it on this squadron, so it's a fast-paced operational squadron, so constantly servicing kit on the counter, trying to do this MVQ, and then you're getting aircrew coming in with snags all the time or issues with their kit, so you're maintaining and servicing and fixing it all at the same time. Yeah.
And how do you cope with that challenge?
Just kind of have to manage the stress of it. You just got to stay calm and just prioritise as well is quite important.
The most challenging thing about completing the apprenticeship was working it alongside my full-time career. So you've moved into a new section, you get into grips with the way that works, and you also got your coursework to do on the side. But that just meant that you got out and about a lot more and still enjoyed the job.
There are a couple of things here. I'm hoping that those times are few and far between, because effectively what we should be doing is making sure that the apprenticeship falls out of the work that they are doing. But similarly, there are times where we might need to drag people away to get that work done for the apprenticeship at somebody else's frustration. And I can completely empathise with that. But what I would say is that if you want a more rounded individual at the end of the day working for you, then just free him up. Just let him have that time. Just let them go, speak with their apprenticeship assessor, get through that apprenticeship, because the skills that they are going to have gained from undertaking this apprenticeship, when they've completed it, will make that team that maybe he's currently at that moment in time frustrated with. But when they complete that apprenticeship, he's going to have a better team of more rounded, skillful individuals. And it's the long game, really, that we're looking at here. Maybe not quite the here and now.
You were talking there, and I know you were just using it as a phrase about him, but obviously the apprenticeship scheme is open right the way across the board, and various members of the community. Have you seen much of an uptake in females and members of the LGBT community coming forward and training?
Well, Chris, I can't tell you the stats necessarily because I don't have that sort of information. But what I can say, and I've seen this firsthand, is that the RAF are taking huge leaps in trying to ensure that they do recruit from all of those minority areas that you've just mentioned, and actively so.
Okay, Duncan, just to round us off here, we may be being listened to by somebody at the moment who's sitting in the block and at a bit of a junction, a bit of a crossroads in their time with the RAF, maybe completing phase 2, phase 3 training, listening in the block and thinking, I don't know if this is for me, this is hard work, and now on top of this, I'm being asked to put in extra hours out of my working hours to study and put time in. What would you say to those people in that situation?
Do you know, it is hard work. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. What I would say is that you need to push through it. It's just this is a small part of your larger career in the Royal Air Force. If you can find it within yourself to knuckle down, get on with the job, and see it through, the benefits will be reaped afterwards. Many of our trades already connect the apprenticeship to future promotion and moving on anyway. But I think that feeling is also maybe something that will only last a short time. You know, that I'm down in the dumps, I don't want to do this. Let's find the energy. Let's get back into the classroom, speak with our assessors, speak with the people that have been there and done it, and you can do it. You can get through that stage and move on to bigger and better things. You know, we don't want to lose people in the Royal Air Force. We want to make sure that we keep them. And one of the fantastic ways in which the RAF is able to retain people is through a continued professional development program. You know, the opportunities that it offers in that regard. The apprenticeship is the start of that. But equally, if you are feeling the need to stop and move on and do something differently, then you really need to have that qualification under your belt. It's something to show outside of the Royal Air Force as and when you decide to make that decision to leave. We don't want to lose you. We want to keep you. But don't give up the apprenticeship, because that's the qualification that's going to give you other opportunities.
And presumably for somebody sitting in that situation, to say it is a passing moment in time, and there is always support, there is always someone they can come talk to.
Always. You only need to pick up a phone. All of our apprentices will be introduced to their assessors, and they will be in touch with them as a minimum every 12 weeks. The RAF has a policy of ensuring that we do what we call a learner progression review, and we ensure that they take place every 12 weeks. Don't necessarily have to do that, but that is one of our key performance indicators. We want to make sure that we keep in touch with our learners, and is a very good reason of why we have such a high percentage pass rate in the 90s.
And a bit like sort of some of the memories from basic training, and those moments when you felt maybe that you were being pushed beyond the envelope of where you're comfortable. One day it's just a story in the pub, isn't it? It's just a memory and something you look back on and laugh at.
It certainly is. And, that's what the military's all about, though. It is about pushing you to a limit and beyond it, because we often find ourselves in a place of adversity that requires you to dig a little bit deeper, to go a little bit further, to reach a little bit higher, and that's what we're after.
Flight Lieutenant Duncan Pope, thank you very much for a really incisive and interesting interview. Thank you for joining us on Inside Air, and thank you too to our Apprentice Award winners for sharing their thoughts with us, and to all of our RAF apprentices. Keep up the great work.
This is Reheat on Inside Air, a recap of some recent news stories from the RAF. I'm LAC Victoria Andrews. Going green remains a hot topic. The fuels our aircraft use is now the focus of efforts to slash carbon emissions, which means it'll be made up of 50% sustainable sources in the future, a change that will see the UK lead the way in sustainability. That's according to Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. It means F-35s, Typhoons and Wildcats will soon be powered by household waste items like grass cuttings and food scraps. Other common waste products like hydrogenated fats and oils from your local chippy, and more unusual things than that even, like algae. Aviation accounts for nearly 2/3 of all fuel used across defence. The Battle Space Management Force at RAF Henlow have received a state-of-the-art long-range air defence radar. Its primary use will be the surveillance of aircraft, but it also has air traffic radar capabilities. The new radar can be deployed around the world at short notice, meaning battle space management missions can be carried out on both long and short-term deployments, as well as gap-filling in the UK in response to operational requirements. And to cricket, where a date has been set for this year's Inter-Services T20 Championships. Last year's tournament was postponed due to coronavirus restrictions, but it's hoped scheduling the event for September of this year, instead of the usual May or June date, will give it the best chance of going ahead. Subject to restrictions, it'll take place at Lord's on September 20th. That's Reheat on Inside Air.
I'm SAC Simon Ross with this episode's Name That Noise. That was the sound of the canopy closing on a multi-role Typhoon FGR-4. Starting life in an air defence role as the successor to the Tornado F3, the Eurofighter Typhoon began development in 1983, but it was a further 20 years before it would officially enter service with the RAF. There was a time when the aircraft might have been named Spitfire II. Instead, the name Typhoon was formally adopted at a naming ceremony in Farnborough in 1998. This dates back to the Hawker Typhoon used by the RAF in the Second World War, and it also continues the storm theme of the Tornado. The Typhoon had its combat debut in the ground attack role in the 2011 military intervention in Libya, alongside the Italian Air Force. And while you're listening to this, RAF Typhoons are poised to respond at a moment's notice to any threats to Britain's airspace. But that's another story.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.